Now, Australia absolutely loves its Land Cruisers, but I can tell you what, they don't love the handbrake on them. And Toyota haven't done anything. We keep putting more weight on them. We keep putting the lift kits, and this one's even got a camping setup up the back. This thing is an absolute beast. But they just never hold. We even adjust this every time it comes into the workshop, and I can guarantee you by the time it's gone out, it's no good anyways. So what was the solution to make sure we had a safe option, especially for this type of vehicle that's doing a lot of touring around the country, to make sure that it's not going to roll away on you in the middle of the night? Bendix have come up with the perfect solution called the electronic park brake solution by Bendix. That's all I know it as. Have a look in the details for more information about that. But in this video, we're going to install it. We're going to see if it works. We're going to see if it's worth doing to give you the ultimate video so you can make the proper choice in what you want to do. So let's have a look at the kit and let's get installing. Now, first and foremost, let's have a look at what we've got in the kit here. Now, these are all the things that Bendix supply us with installing this kit. Most importantly is the calipers itself. So there's a left and right caliper. You'll see the electronic unit in here. So that what actually screws in the piston, so it's holding on to the rotor there instead of the drum assembly internally there as well. Now, these replace the actual calipers on the car, so they are a direct replacement. You take the old ones off, you'll discard them, you'll put these in, bleed them up, and go from there. A couple of brake shims and clips as need be. The wiring harness as well, probably the big thing that talks to absolutely everything. Now, a lot of this comes pre-wired, so you can see the connector boxes here. They've got the eyelets on there and all that type of stuff. A couple of little ones where they're the spare, but we'll go through the instructions and see what's need be, but you can even see where all the little connectors are on there to try and make it as plug and play as possible. Got yourself a set of Bendix Ultimate 4-wheel drive pads here that you'll put in the back there as well. The switches, which fit into the console, so that should not look all nice and factory there. Control module, control box, and then, you know, your stickers, zip ties, and a few instructions. Now, the instructions seem a little bit vague. I was just reading through it. One of the first options were here, not options, instructions, were to mount the control module under the bonnet, but it doesn't tell you where or doesn't give you any specifics on that. But they do have a bit of a wiring diagram, a QR code which directs to their video as well. Hopefully we can give a bit more detail than that. We might need to refer to it later on. Now, first things first, we got to get the module all mounted up, and the position we've picked is behind the airbox here. Watching the video is a little bit different, and I wasn't 100% happy with how we need to put it on there, but this settled the best for the car in the application. And you can see here with the wiring as well, got it all laid out because we really want to trace it through and everything. Got the airbox out. We can show all the different positions where we're talking about and what we need to mount up as well. But with the airbox out, it also gave us a great way of how to put all the wiring in. I did spend a fair bit of time just making sure it's all pretty and all looking nice as well. We know the type of driving this customer does as well. Does a lot of off-road driving, so we want to make sure it's just 100%. Running it all the way over to the battery around the back there. Now, we haven't hooked it up to the battery. We've just stuck it around in that area to get the wiring out of the way. You want to really plug it into the battery at the last minute as well. Now, this is where we start to get into the bit of a tricky part. This is one thing that I actually got really frustrated with. If we can see down here, this is in the pedal assembly. I found the grommet on the right-hand side there that I wanted to stick the wiring through. Now, I thought this was going to be easy. You can see that little nub there as well. I thought I could just cut that and then just jump straight in through there, but the wiring and the connectors were too big. That one didn't go all the way through, so I ended up frustratingly have to cut some holes and run it in a bit harder through there as well. But one thing I would recommend doing is getting some Sikaflex in there and resealing that back up, especially because you will have to damage it a little bit to get up and in there as well. Now, this taps into where the ignition barrel is. So we pull this connector off and we've got to see exactly where we've got to tap it into, but this is where the switch actually fits in as well. Really nice. It looks fantastic. You can see how I've just mounted in there. Bar the little bit of chrome, it actually looks, you know, quite standard and quite factory. It's just one thing I really, really love when companies go out there and have a lot of hard thought in how it's going to look and how it's going to mount up. Took me 10 seconds to plug it straight in. Now, I ended up pulling the wiring out of the ignition connector to try and get a good solder and connection onto where I needed to be as well. I would have loved it if they had some pins that I could have just joined up and brought the two wires into one. But this case, it's just nearly an impossibility to find the right pins without having to destroy another car as well. So just splicing it into the end and giving it a good solder, plenty of heat wrap and plenty of electrical wire, follow your correct procedures to make sure that that's all 100%. Next thing we've got to do as well is we've actually got to pull the instrument cluster out. Now, this is really, really simple. It's kind of like these cars didn't make any further leeway in the modern age. They're like an old 80s Land Cruiser as well, but you've got to pull that out to jump into the connectors so you can wire up the brake warning light as well. So if you have the brakes on with the electric handbrake as well, it'll still pull up on the dash with that handbrake light as well. So really good thinking on that part to come in through the module there that you can tap into it. It's still going to have the light on, so if you do get a bit confused, you just got to have a look at your dash and see exactly what's going on there. Now, we've got the wiring run through the cabin, but we need to do the rest of the wiring underneath the car. Lucky this thing is so tall that I can nearly lie underneath it and just jump it straight through there. But I did find a bit of a tight hole around the right-hand front guard there as well to make sure I can loop it all the way down. I did end up getting it back onto the hoist as well. That jack that we had just is really good for lifting up our race cars, but it's absolutely hopeless for lifting up the big truck like this. So got it in, got it on hoist, but now we start to get into the interesting bits of putting the brake calipers on. Now, these are a direct replacement fit in. They look exactly like a rear brake caliper from a Land Cruiser, except that they've got the electric handbrake module bolted onto the side of it as well, or pretty much not bolted on, but a form part of that unit as well. So it's as simple as just taking out two bolts and just sliding it straight on there. Now, one thing I did do is when I disconnected the brake line, I made sure just to hold it up. A little bit of brake fluid is going to come out anyways. I highly do not recommend that you clamp these brake lines as well. They've got little copper rods inside the rubber bits of the brake line. You're only going to lose a little bit of brake fluid. It's best to give it a full proper brake fluid flush anyways to make sure that that's all sweet there. As simple as just throwing in the brake pads now as well, and that way we can it's pretty much nearly ready to go. So one thing with these rotors as well, this car's only got about 20,000 Ks on it, so I wasn't too worried about doing any machining or the rotors or replacing it. Now, if this is a lot higher K car as well, you got 80, 100,000 Ks on there, I would recommend replacing the rotors. It's one thing we do at the workshop because we have had so many comebacks with brake shutters and problems, especially if these cars are getting real heavy brake applications. We want to make sure that's all okay. Running the wiring onto the back of your diff is obviously going to depend on the application. I've picked around these areas that I could just get it down, and friendly enough, I was going to try and running it off the handbrake cables, but I ended up trying to extend it back as well so I could drop it down and be all nice from that point. You can see here, this is where I was running the wiring up from the down the guard as well. And it all plugs in and it's really nice and easy this part. This was actually a lot easier here. As you can see, I'm going through and bleeding the brake fluid and getting that all up to spec as well. But there we are, turning the ignition on, giving it a test, flick the button, as easy as that, and it comes on. You don't have to worry about that handbrake, well, that dodgy handbrake, as you can see here, that just doesn't work. This one is as simple as a flick of the button. I say it works better than a brand new car anyways. It gives you a lot more feel and a lot more comfortable feeling from it as well. But now we've got all the brakes in, we've got the kit all set up, we've got to go take it for a test drive, we've got to go bed the brakes in as well. So giving it a really, really good bed in brake procedure to make sure that those brakes come up to temperature. And there we have it, guys, all done, all finished, and feeling absolutely fantastic. So taking it on a road test, I made sure the bed in the rear pads, first thing I felt was I was feeling soft. You got to bed them in and make sure that they're all okay there. So I do about 40, 50 Ks an hour, put my foot on the brake, come down to about 10 k's an hour, and do that for about 10 times. Then I usually go and cool the brakes off and do it another 10 times. It's just the way we've done it with our race car brakes that I really found the best results for these. Now, in the sense of how it compares to the old handbrake, it is chalk and cheese. It's not even the same system. So I love the auto hold feature. So if you take your keys out of the ignition, the brakes automatically come on and make sure you lock the car, especially if you're four-wheel drive and you're in and out of the car. You've got to do a heap of things. First thing you might forget is actually pulling the handbrake on if it does work and the car rolls back and then causes some injuries. So we want to avoid that, and this is where it comes in perfectly. Now, a lot of things I do love about the system. There's some things that I don't really love, but look, they're really minute things in the end of it. The instructions probably could have had a bit more information or been a bit more clear in it, but in the sense, if you've got a technical mind on you, you can work yourself around it as well. Maybe a bit more length on the cabling, and I would have liked a nice good bracket for that module. You know, maybe sit it over the top of the ABS pump or something like that, have it a bit easy to access, and that way we can guarantee some reliability, because we know these get an absolute workout on the trails and on the road and absolutely everywhere. But other than that, it's a fantastic system. You know, it gives you a lot of control and usability of it, and also with the safety features of the automatic locking on brake, which you can wire in or out as need be. I think it works really well. So I'll probably say this is probably one of the most important modifications you can do to a Land Cruiser. I don't even know why they haven't got them from standard or a better handbrake from factory, but it's great that the guys at Bendix could come along and invent a system that is just works so well, and it is simple-ish to install. You know, anyone that's swung a spanner before should be able to handle it in an afternoon. This took us one afternoon to do it. You know, I am a mechanic, but for most people, I shouldn't see why it doesn't take you about a day. You might need a hand to bleed the brakes and all that type of stuff, but it's pretty easy to get in and out and all that type of stuff. So there you have it. I definitely think it's a win for this system. It's something that you must have. I get it installed from the dealership if you're picking up one there, or even if you're getting one second hand, make sure you get that electronic handbrake. It'll be the best thing that you've got on these Land Cruisers.